Dred Scott was not well known during his life, but he has become historically significant for what he fought against.
Scott had been a slave of John Emerson and in turn lived where Mr. Emerson did. In the 1830s, this included a time where Emerson lived in territories organized after the Louisiana Purchase, Illinois, and Minnesota.
This is important because the Missouri Compromise of 1820 banned slavery north of the 3630. Therefore, the question that you have to ask is, because slavery was banned in a place Scott lived, was he still a slave?
After Emerson died in 1846, Scott and his family were inherited by Emerson's wife, Irene, though friends of Scott convinced him to sue for his freedom on the grounds of living in a free territory for an extended period of time.
This was the start of what would be over a decade of court battles for Scott and his family.
At first, Scott lost his case, but then won on an appeal in 1850. 2 years later, Missouri Supreme Court overturned the decision and ordered the Scots back into slavery.
Scott's lawyers challenged this ruling in 1854 but lost. They chose to appeal to the Supreme Court that had a Southern majority of justices.
There were three main questions that the Supreme Court was trying to answer in this case. Number one, as a black man, was Scott a citizen with a right to sue in federal court? Number two, had living in a free state and a free territory made Scott free? And number three, in 1820, did Congress actually have the right to ban slavery in the Louisiana Purchase territory north of the 3630 line?
79-year-old Roger Taney was Chief Justice and was well respected. Taney had no great love for the institution of slavery. In fact, he had freed his own slaves. But he was passionate about defending Southern life and values, which seemed organically linked to the peculiar institution and unpreservable without it, Taney explained.
On March 6, 1857, 11 years after Scott began this process, the Supreme Court issued its decision. All 9 justices wrote opinions that were very different. This is what Chief Justice Taney has to say in his majority opinion. The question before us is whether Negroes compose a portion of the American people and are constituent members of the sovereignty. We think they are not. On the contrary, they are a subordinate and inferior class of beings who have been subjugated by the dominant race. They can therefore claim none of the rights and privileges which the Constitution provides for the citizens of the United States.
It couldn't have been stated more clearly. Slaves are property, and the Fifth Amendment protects property. The Missouri Compromise, prohibiting slavery in the territories, is unconstitutional. So according to Taney and a majority of justices, Wisconsin was not free territory when Dred Scott lived there, even though no one had realized it. Furthermore, says the court, blacks have no right to citizenship. Even free blacks have no rights which the white man is bound to respect.
In Springfield, Illinois, Abraham Lincoln says, "We think this decision to be erroneous." He also says that slavery is an unqualified evil to the Negro, the white man, and the state. President James Buchanan thought this decision would settle the slavery question. What it settles is the question of war. It makes war almost certain.